hear the phrase bioaccumulation a lot, and that appears to be the next greatest thing that the FDA is really pushing towards. Could you talk for a moment about what bioaccumulation is and how we address that and what the risks are to the patient?
Yeah, absolutely. So in years past, we really haven't focused too much on how leachates can stay in the body and interact with the tissues of the body. And there's a very basic principle in toxicology of absorption. So how is the chemical absorbed? Distribution, how does it go throughout the body? Metabolism, how is it metabolized? And then excretion, how does it leave the body? Well, the idea of bioaccumulation is that there is a potential for either repeat exposure or even a single exposure, depending on the chemistry of the leachate that could potentially come out of the polymer or the medical device. Some things tend to stay in the body longer. Some things are lipophilic, they tend to stay in fat cells, or they tend to get stored, and your body continuously is breaking those chemicals down. And bioaccumulation now has become a point of contention, I would say, because there's the worry that even small doses, small repeat exposures to medical devices could create an effect where you have a bioaccumulation. What we do at PSN Labs is we assume that everything is 100% bioavailable and use a worst case calculation and incorporate that in our toxicological calculations. So when we are doing a repeat use device or a prolonged or a permanent exposure device, we account for that already. We're looking at it in a chronic context, and we're looking at points of departure that help us understand if there is a bioaccumulative property, what does that look like, and ensuring that we're picking the appropriate thresholds.
So I think back to the early portion of my career where I was transitioning a lot of brominated flame retardants to alternatives. Now it seems like the latest and greatest is things like nitrosamines and potentially the fluorinated forever chemicals. Yeah. When we talk about bioaccumulation there, what do you see as the next 5 to 10 years in this space, and how do we account for that from a patient risk perspective?
That's a great question. So I think that fluorinated chemicals, the forever chemicals that are going to be ubiquitous. I see regulatory agencies, regulatory bodies banning all of those kinds of materials. I see regulatory agencies putting together a list of commonly known polyolefin, thermoplastic, TPUs, TPEs, as what they deem to be acceptable and safe. And I see a more stringent guidance coming out in what you're allowed to make your medical device out of based on the type of contact that it makes, almost like what is in ISO 10993-1, but perhaps more materials driven. Because for a patient risk, there's always the possibility that repeat exposure or using that device could expose the patient to something that stays around. And of course, if we're just talking about medical devices in general, these patients aren't healthy to begin with. So making sure that those are all things that are accounted for during the analyses, during the biological testing, and during the tox risk assessment is very important.